Hi friends, my name is Jenny and I'm back today to do another video. So as you can see, I'm in a new angle. I was trying to film this video and I filmed the first like 5 minutes like 3 different times and I just hated where I was sitting for all of it. So I've totally rearranged my room now. And I'm sitting here. My cat loves that I've totally rearranged the room. By the way, he's just like wandering around. He just checked himself out in the mirror. He's having a blast. So we're today gonna be filming my summer TBR plans. I'm not planning on making separate June and July TBRs just because I think the months are kind of gonna run together for me. I have a lot going on this summer in terms of moving. I'm moving to Charlottesville in the beginning of August. I also am in my cousin's wedding, which is gonna be at the end of July. And then I'm also working full-time. So I'm gonna be pretty busy this summer, but I am hoping to get a lot of reading done, particularly because I'm moving and there's a lot of books that I am interested in reading, but have been like sitting on my TBR for a long time, or have had them featured in TBR videos and I didn't get to them. So I'd love to get to those books before I move in August. So let's just get into the books that I'm hoping to read. This is gonna be a pretty casual video, as you can see, because I didn't have that much motivation to film like a big sit down prepared video. So here we go. Starting with the 6 arcs that I have that are coming out at some point during the summer. I have 2 June arcs, both of which are short story collections. So I will be doing one of my arc reading vlogs that I've been doing for the past couple of months. The first of those is Sight Fidelity by Claire Boyles. This is a debut short story collection about women living in the American West, ranging I think from the 1970s to the near future, and I believe the stories feature a lot about women and their relationships to the environment and the changing environment, so I'm super excited about getting into that one. Sight Fidelity is coming out on June 15th, and on June 22nd I have Filthy Animals by Brandon Taylor. I read and absolutely loved Real Life by Brandon Taylor. That was one of my favorite books of last year. So I'm super excited about this one. This is a short story collection about creatives in the Midwest, I think. And both of those will be featured in a reading vlog at some point in June. Then in July, I have 2 books that I think I'm tentatively going to pair together as multicultural stories about memory and remembering people specifically. So the first of those is Ghost Forest by Peek Shun Fang, I think is how you say her name, but I'm not entirely sure. This one's coming out on July 13th, and it's about a young woman who's dealing with the loss of her father, who worked a lot, and she is kind of reminiscing about the person she knew and how that differs from how other people knew him. Also, the cover is fantastic. And then on August 3rd, I have The President and the Frog by Carolina de Robertis. I read Cantoras by de Robertis last October, and it was also one of my favorite books of the year, so I was super excited to read her new release. This is about a president of a country in South America. I don't know if it's named, I don't know if it's a real country or a fictionalized country, but he was, I believe, kind of a dictator, and so he's been in prison for quite a while, and then a journalist comes and kind of learns his story, and I believe there's some sort of element with a frog, so it sounds like it has some magical realism elements to it as well. And so that will be another reading vlog in July. And then finally in August, I have 2 books about trees, one fiction book and one non-fiction book. So the first fiction book is called Damnation Spring by Ash Davidson. This is coming out on August 3rd, and I believe is a debut novel set in the Pacific Northwest during the logging wars, which was an environmental movement there against logging that was happening in the 70s through the 90s, because there are a lot of endangered species that live in the forests of the Pacific Northwest, but it also was a livelihood for a lot of people, working class people living there. And so it's a really interesting dynamic that I've learned a bit about in some classes I've taken. I'm excited to see a fictionalized narrative about that. And then I also have The Arbornaut by Meg Lohman, which is coming out on August 10th. And that one is a memoir, I think probably has similar vibes to Lab Girl, about Meg Lohman's life working as a canopy ecologist. So this book is basically her journey through, I believe, her school and her research as she has learned more about the tree canopy and the diversity of life that lives there. So super excited about that one as well. And again, we'll be doing a themed reading vlog for those 2 books. Then I have a few books that I have on hold from the library that I'm really eager to get to. The first of which is Ophi's Ghost by Justina Ireland. This is a middle grade novel that I talked about in my anticipated releases video. I guess it was from March to June or April to June. I'll put a link to it up in the cards above. But this, as I said, is a middle grade novel that's a historical novel set in 1920s Georgia, although our main character later moves to Pittsburgh, I think. And her father, I believe, is killed in Georgia by the Ku Klux Klan at the beginning of the novel. And so she and her mother move to Pittsburgh, and her mother is working in the house of I believe, a wealthy white family in Pittsburgh. And Ophi realizes that she can speak to ghosts that have died in the house. And so she's kind of goes on an adventure to help them get retribution for whatever happened to them in their lives. So I'm super excited about that one. It sounds like it has some really interesting themes, particularly for a middle grade novel. So I'll definitely be reading that one soon. And then I also have a few audiobooks on hold. The first of those is 400 Souls, which is edited by Eva Rex Kennedy and Keisha N. Blaine. This is a 400-year history of African America from 1619 to 2019, and I have heard nothing but amazing things, particularly about the audiobook of this one, as I believe it's narrated by some kind of big names, like Daveed Diggs, I think, is on it. He's the only one I can think of, but I think there are other bigger like Black actors and people on Broadway and such that narrate this, so I'm super excited to dig into that. I think it's also, I've heard kind of different styles throughout, as the 90 different contributors, I believe, to the collection kind of had free reign in terms of how they wanted to present the time period they were given, and so it's like 10-year increments from 1619 all the way to 2019. And then I also will be at some point this summer listening to a Muslim middle grade novel. I've not yet decided which one. I have a few options available as audiobooks from my library. If you have read a Muslim middle grade novel for the Reading Women Challenge that you really enjoyed, do let me know down in the comment section below, as I'd love to receive any of your recommendations. And then finally, I have on hold Mr. Impossible by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the second in the Dreamer trilogy, which is the continuation of the Raven cycle, which I've read a couple years ago, really enjoyed. It's just a YA fantasy, urban fantasy series that I really enjoy quite a lot. I feel like it's really atmospheric, and the kind of plots are interesting, so I have enjoyed listening to the audiobooks of all of those. And so every time a new one comes out, I kind of put it on hold at the library, and that one will come in at some point this summer, I'm hoping. So those are all my library books. Now moving into my actual physical books that I'm hoping to read, which there's quite a few of them all stacked behind you, so hopefully they won't topple over at any point during this video. But the first book that I'm hoping to tackle this summer is what I'm calling my project book. I often like to have a book that I'm like working through for an entire month or sometimes several months. If you have been on my channel for a while, you might remember that for the second half of 2020, I was working through the New Daughters of Africa anthology, which is over 1,000 pages, and I would just read like 5 or 10 pages each day for like 5 or 6 months, and then I finished it by the end of the year. So I'm intrigued about having another like summer project for these 9 weeks between now and July 28th, which is like my cutoff date, because that's when I leave for Madison to go be in my cousin's wedding and visit some friends in the Midwest region. So I want to get this book read because it's been sitting on my TBR for an absurdly long amount of time. That book is Fool's Fate by Robin Hobb. This is the third book in the Tawny Man trilogy, which is a continuation of the Realm of the Elderling series, which is a many book series. I think it's like 13 maybe, and this is book 9 of the entire series and book 3 of this trilogy. I started the Realm of the Elderlings when I went abroad in 2017. I had a month where I was doing research, and I brought all 3 of that trilogy and the first of the Game of Thrones books, which I guess is called Game of Thrones. And I read all 4 of those 900+ page books, so you can see how much free time I had during that month of research. But I have slowly been continuing on in the Realm of the Elderlings since I read the first year trilogy back in 2017, and I think I read the second one of this series back right before the pandemic started in like January, February of 2020 is when I finished it. And honestly, that book was kind of a slog for me, so I've been somewhat hesitant to pick this one up, but I do know a lot of things are going to come together in this book that will be really well done. I mean, Robin Hobb is just fantastic. If you know anyone on BookTube who reads fantasy, or you watch anyone who reads fantasy, you know that Robin Hobb is kind of like a BookTube queen of the fantasy readers, as her books are just phenomenal. So I do think this book will be really good and really engaging. It's just like quite a chunker. Also, you can see on my like tabs, I've tabbed it out week by week of how much I should read every single day. I'm planning on reading about 100 pages each week over the 9 weeks that I have before I leave for Madison. I can't even give you a plot synopsis because, as I said, this is the 9th book in this series, but the general plot synopsis, I guess, of this series is that we follow Fitz, who is a bastard son of the prince who's next in line for the throne of this land called the Six Duchies, and Fitz is kind of entered into the court, but his father abdicates the throne and disappears, and so no one really knows what to do with Fitz, so he kind of gets involved in the court as the assistant to the royal assassin, and we kind of follow Fitz through his early childhood slash like young adulthood in the first series, and then the second series follows a different set of characters in a different part of the world that have kind of started to make appearances in this one, and then this series is following Fitz as he's like 30-40 after all the events of the two previous series have occurred. So there's kind of a lot going on in this book that you kind of obviously have had to have read the previous 8 books to understand anything. So yeah, excited about this one. We'll definitely be reading it throughout this summer. Then I also have a buddy read planned for June with Courtney, who I'll put a link to down in the description box below. We are planning on reading The Roundhouse by Louise Erdrich together. This is going to be my first Erdrich, although I know Courtney has read several of her books and really enjoys them. And this one is kind of a thriller. I think it takes place in the 1980s, and it follows a boy after, I believe, his mother has been assaulted, and his family's kind of going through the tribal justice process. I've had this on my shelf for a really long time, so I'm excited to be getting to it this month with Courtney. Then the next 2 books are going to be for my book club that I do with 2 of my best friends. Last summer, we read My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante, which was one of our all-time favorite book club picks. And as any of you know who are familiar with Elena Ferrante, that is a 4-part series. So we've decided that we're going to read the last one together as our like June-July book club pick. However, I still have to read the 3rd one, which is Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay. This series is about 2 best friends who are born in 1950s Italy in Naples, and it basically just follows their friendship as the 2 of them compete with one another and grow up and develop a more complicated relationship with one another. Obviously, I can't tell you what happened in the 2nd book because that would spoil the first 2 books, but this one I assume takes place where the 2nd one left off, which it definitely left off on a cliffhanger, so I'm really eager to get to this one, and we'll hopefully be reading it sooner rather than later, especially because I do also have to read the 4th one, which is the story of the lost child. No idea who these 2 children are, but I'm sure I will figure that out. So yeah, I will be reading both of these books at some point during the summer, probably in the first like 5 or 6 weeks, and this one definitely sooner rather than later. Then a booktube event that I'm hoping to participate in the month of June is Caribathon, which is being hosted by Peta from Comfy Cozy Up and Karen from Run Right Reads, who I'll put both of them down in the description box below. And it's running from June 9th to June 18th, and basically is a readathon encouraging people to pick up Caribbean authors or books set in the Caribbean, as June is Caribbean Heritage Month here in the States. So I have 3 books that I'm planning on reading, and I'm also planning on vlogging the readathon, as a lot of people enjoyed my themed vlogs that I did during the month of May. So the first of those is also a reading Roman prompt pick. So I'll be reading How to Escape a Leper Colony, a novella and stories by Tiffany Unique. Unique is from St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands, and this is a collection of stories set in the US Virgin Islands that are lyrical, lush, and haunting. And I believe part oral history, part post-colonial narrative. How to Escape from a Leper Colony is ultimately a loving portrait of a wholly unique place. So super excited about that. Honestly, I know very little about the Caribbean, and so I'm excited to kind of dig into 3 different places over the course of this readathon. So this is the first one I'm reading, and this will also complete the reading Roman prompt to read a short story collection from a Caribbean author. Then in addition to that, I also am planning on reading These Ghosts Are Family by Maisie Card. Maisie Card is actually not from the Caribbean per se. She was born here in the States, but her family is Jamaican, and the family we follow in this novel is also Jamaican. And this is a novel about a young man who takes over another man's life. So the 2 of them are in London together working, I think, at a shipyard, and one of his friends dies and he's mistaken for the dead person, so he actually assumes the identity of the dead person and begins a new life. And I believe this book is following after his death, his 2 families and 2 separate lives kind of coming together and realizing the existence of one another, and kind of talking about him as a person and the differences of the 2 people that they knew. Heard pretty good things about this one on BookTube, and also I just love this cover. And then finally, this author is actually not from the Caribbean, so this doesn't really count, but I'm stretching it because I've been meaning to read this book, and it also fulfills the reading Roman prompt. I'm going to be reading Isabel Allende's Island Beneath the Sea. This is set on St. Dominique, which is in the Caribbean, and so that's why I'm counting it. And this is a historical fiction novel set in the 1700s and follows an enslaved woman living on St. Dominique, and I believe we just kind of follow her life. I think she has a love interest in this book as well. It's quite long, so I think it's kind of a like family saga life story type of novel, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna be doing this one on audio during that week and a half. So those are the 3 books that I'm planning on reading for Caribathon. And then since I was just talking about other books that I'm hoping to read that fit Reading Women Challenge prompts, I will go through other Reading Women Challenge prompts that I'm hoping to complete during this summer. The first of those is one that I put on my May TBR that I wasn't able to get to just because I ran out of time. It's definitely one of the first books I think I'm going to read once June rolls around, and that's While Justice Sleeps by Stacey Abrams. This is Stacey Abrams' debut political thriller. She's written both romance novels and nonfiction books in the past, but this one is set in the Supreme Court and follows a legal clerk of one of the justices who has fallen into a coma, and she has to take his place as a justice. And I believe she begins digging into an upcoming case that they're going to hear about a pharmaceutical company merge, and I believe she realizes that some shady stuff is going on. I went to an event with Stacey Abrams with my mom. It was a virtual event and it was so fun. Stacey Abrams is hilarious and also just so welcoming. Like, you just feel so kind of comforted by hearing her speak, and the host of the event and her interviewer was raving about this book, said that she could not put it down, said it was absolutely amazing. So super excited to dig into this one, and definitely will be reading it sooner rather than later. Also, the copy I have is signed, which I love. So yeah, definitely one that I'll be reading very soon. Then another prompt that I'm hoping to complete this summer is a poetry collection by a Black woman, and at Independent Bookstore Day, which I talked about in some vlog, I think it was my springathon vlog, which I'll put a link to up in the cards above, I got Ghost in a Black Girl's Throat, which is poems by Kalisa Ray. Ray is from North Carolina, I believe, and this is a debut poetry collection. I don't really know how to describe poetry collections, as I'm not super familiar with them, but I loved the cover of this one. And I read the first poem, which is called Ghost in a Black Girl's Throat, while I was kind of browsing at Independent Bookstore Day at my little local feminist bookstore, and the first poem really intrigued me, so I thought I would pick this up and give it a go. Sorry if the angle has changed slightly. Some of the books fell down, and so I did have to pick them up. But I also am hoping to get through several other Reading Women prompt books this summer, so I'll kind of go through all of them together now. And I'm potentially thinking of doing like a reading vlog around all my Reading Women prompt books, so do let me know if that would be something of interest to you. I have been getting really into doing the reading vlogs just because I like how casual they are, so if you have been enjoying watching them and want to see me do kind of a Reading Women vlog, do let me know down in the comment section below. Additionally, I also think I'm going to do a like Reading Women check-in at some point during the month of June, so look out for that as well. But the other books that I have acquired that I'm interested in reading this summer are Lila Abuela's Elsewhere Home. This is a short story collection by Abuela, who is one of the 4 like author prompts that are kind of the bonus prompts of the challenge. Abuela is from Sudan, I believe. She lives in Khartoum, or she grew up in Khartoum and now lives in Aberdeen, Scotland. And these are, I believe, about Muslim Sudanese people living in the diaspora of Sudan. Many of them, I think, are living in England or London. Let's see. Shuttling between the dusty, sun-baked streets of Khartoum and the university halls and cramped apartments of Aberdeen and London, Elsewhere Home explores with subtlety and restraint the profound feeling of yearning, loss, and alienation that comes with leaving one's homeland in pursuit of a different life. So super excited about these stories. Unfortunately, I got this book as a used library book, and it is the world's stickiest book. Like, I took off the very thick plastic binding that was on it, and now it's the world's stickiest book. Like, I put Goo Gone on it, I did rubbing alcohol, I did all of it. It's still very sticky. If you have any other secret tips, do let me know, because this book is like frustrating to touch. I mean, I feel like you can hear how sticky it is. So there is that one. I also got a pretty banged up copy of Nervous Conditions by Tizi Dangaranga. This is another one of the bonus author prompts, and I don't know a ton about this. I just figured this would be a good place to start with Dangaramba because this is her debut novel, I think, and also is the first of her like connected trilogy of novels about our main character by the name of Tambu, who I believe is growing up in Zimbabwe. And this kind of follows her early childhood / into her teen years, I think. I'm intrigued about it. I've heard pretty good things about it from people I know who have read it in the past on BookTube. Then I also have a copy of A Mind Spread Out on the Ground by Alicia Elliott, which I'm planning on reading for the memoir by an Indigenous author prompt. So this is a memoir and essays by Alicia Elliott, who is half Mohawk, I believe, which is the Indigenous group that originally lived around the Great Lakes region between the United States and Canada. And I believe this was originally published in Canada before being picked up by a US publisher. I've heard amazing things about this from people I know that have read it on BookTube, so I'm super excited to be digging into this one as well. And then I also have Celestial Bodies by Joka El-Harthi, which is going to fulfill the prompt of a book by an Arab author in translation. El-Harthi is Omani, I believe. Yes, she's the first Omani woman to have a novel translated into English. Congrats to her. And this is translated by Marilyn Booth. And I believe this, yes, this was the winner of the Man Booker International Prize a few years ago, and I believe follows several Omani women living in rural Oman. So excited about that. I truly know very little about that region of the world. I would love to know more, and so I'm excited to dig into this book and hopefully get a better sense of at least some of what that part of the world is like. And as with any of these books, if you're interested in like doing a buddy read or anything like that, do let me know down in the comment section below. And then finally, a book that has been on previous TBRs and I just haven't gotten around to it yet is Sing Unburied Sing by Desmond Ward, which I'm reading for the prompt about a book about incarceration, as this is a novel about a young boy by the name of Jojo, who's going with his black mother to pick up his white father from prison as he's being released from prison. I believe there's some magical realism elements of this. I've been really eager to get to it, as Desmond Ward is an author I've been wanting to try for a while. So this is another one that I definitely want to get to sooner rather than later. And then, in case that wasn't enough books, I have a whole extra pile of books that I'm just like excited to get to, or I've put on previous TBRs and just have never gotten around to them. So we'll quickly go through those books now, since I have been talking already for quite a while. The first of those is The Flicker of Old Dreams by Susan Henderson. So this is, I believe, somewhere between genre fiction, contemporary fiction, and literary fiction. And it's about a young woman named Mary Crampton who is living in this small town by the name of Petroleum that several years previous experienced the loss of one of the star athletes of the high school due to a grain elevator incident. And I believe, looking back on that incident, some kind of new evidence is being presented, or I think someone who's originally suspected of being involved returns to the town, and that's kind of where our story takes off. I have had this one again on my shelf for a really long time, and I want to read it at some point, so this feels like the perfect time to do so. Plus, it's pretty short. I feel like it'll be pretty quick. Then I have two nonfiction books that I'm hoping to get to. The first of those is A Garden of Marvels, How We Discovered That Flowers Have Sex, Leaves Eat Air, and Other Secrets of Plants by Ruth Cassinger. This one, again, was on a previous TBR, I think in March, and I have not yet gotten to it. I am definitely eager to dig into this one. My mom has read it and said it was really readable and interesting and enjoyable. Then I also have Triumph of the City, How Our Greatest Invention Makes Us Richer, Smarter, Greener, Healthier, and Happier by Edward Glaser. This was also on a previous TBR, I think in April, and I was not able to get to it then, so I'm eager to get to it now. This is an urban planning book about cities and their economic value, I believe in particular, as Edward Glaser is an urban economist. And then just from last month's TBR, I have Ohio by Stephen Markley. This is a fiction novel about four friends who grew up in rural central Ohio, and I believe one of them left after high school and is now come back, and we're following those four friends as they kind of reconcile their lives in Ohio and kind of Ohio in general and rural life in general. I've heard that this book kind of tackles that Rust Belt part of the country in really interesting ways. Stephen Markley is from rural Ohio himself, and so although he no longer lives there, I feel like this book will give a pretty accurate portrayal of some of the kind of issues of opioid addiction and poverty and toxic masculinity that kind of plague these parts of the country. So super intrigued about this one. Then a book that is technically my mom's, which is why I want to get to it this summer because I'm not taking it with me, is Jane Harper's The Survivors. This is Jane Harper's fourth book. She is a mystery thriller writer, and I've read all three of her previous novels and really enjoyed them. She's definitely one of my favorite mystery writers, and this one I believe takes place on a beach and follows a family who one of the brothers maybe died on the beach a long time ago. With mystery thrillers, I don't like to know a lot before going into them, so I really know nothing about this one, but I definitely will be reading it at some point. And then another one that I got at Independent Bookstore Day from my indie feminist bookstore is Stop Saving the Planet, Environmentalist Manifesto by Jenny Price. This is a teeny tiny book, and I believe this is basically just a critique of kind of upper middle class white environmentalism that is not focused actually on like helping low income communities that are most impacted by environmental change, which is definitely something I agree with. So I'm intrigued to read this book and kind of hear Jenny Price's argument about that. Then another one that has been on previous TBRs that I'm considering just unhauling without reading because I don't know how interested I am in reading it. So if you have read it, do let me know down in the comment section below, like if you enjoyed it, which that book is The Golden State by Lydia Kiesling. This is about a young woman who is a mother to a toddler, and her husband is stuck in a deportation facility as he is legally allowed in the United States, but for some reason he's not being allowed to enter at this point. And I believe our main narrator is kind of losing her mind because of it. So I'm intrigued about this one. I actually heard someone talk about it somewhat recently. I think it was Rebecca Eats Books in her video about motherhood, but I'm not entirely sure. But this is one that I have available as an audiobook, so I'm probably going to consume it that way. Another one that's available to me as an audiobook is The Come Down by Rebecca Frumkin. This one I put on my March TBR, I think, as it was one of my random TBR picks that month, and I still haven't gotten to it. It's about two families living in Cleveland, Ohio. Actually, it might be nice to pair Ohio by Stephen Markley and The Come Down by Rebecca Frumkin. I'll think about that. So this one is about two families living in Ohio, in Cleveland, Ohio, and I believe they are somehow involved with one another because of something related to drugs or like drug trafficking. So excited about this one as well. And then my booktube spin number 2 pick was A Kind of Freedom by Margaret Wilkerson Sexton. I read Sexton's sophomore novel, which was The Refreshers, and really enjoyed it, so I wanted to pick up her debut novel and just have never gotten around to it. But this one is about 3 generations of a single family all living in New Orleans, the first of which follows a World War II timeline, the second of which is taking place in the 80s, and the third takes place around Hurricane Katrina in 2006. So excited about this one as well, and it's also very short, so hopefully we'll be able to get to this one relatively quickly. And then these final 2 books, this has been like over 30 books, so sorry that this video is absurdly long. The final 2 books are both books that have been sitting on my TBR for a while, and again, if I end up getting to the point where I'm moving, I don't think either of these books would be coming with me. So if I don't read them now, I'm not planning on reading them anytime soon. The first of those is Rules of Civility by Amor Towles. This one I think I'm going to really enjoy, and summer feels like the perfect time to read this book, I guess because the cover looks very summery. So I am going to make this a priority this month. This is a historical fiction novel set in the 1920s following a young woman who kind of enters the upper echelon of New York society at this time, and it kind of follows a year in her life. And then the last book is also a nonfiction book that I have available as an audiobook, so I'll probably consume it that way, and that's Urban Forests, A Natural History of Trees and People in the American Cityscape by Jill Jones. This is a book all about trees in urban environments, I believe starting with the history of trees in urban environments and kind of early scholars in the 18th century who were kind of interested in greenifying cities, all the way into the kind of present day research into the benefits that cities get from having trees present. So super excited about this one. I've again had this on my shelves for years and years. I think I actually bought this for one of my parents for Christmas several years ago, and both of them have read it and really enjoy it and highly recommend that I read it. So that is what I'm planning to do this summer. So those are all the many books that I'm hoping to read this summer. Do let me know down in the comment section below what you are interested in reading this summer. Additionally, as I said previously, if any of these books are ones you'd want to buddy read with me, I'd love to do so. I feel like that will be good motivation to kind of get some of these done. Finally, if you are new to my channel, I'd love to have you stick around and subscribe. I hope you're having a great rest of your day whenever you watch this, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.